You can't have a direct support staff that continues to thrive in the environment that they have to perform the services if they don't have a supervisor who can support their performance. It's an investment of time, we all agree. But you're either committing the time now and ensuring that we have successful supervisors, or you'll commit time later when we lose the DSP or the supervisor. We're not waiting for this performance review. Some agencies might only do performance reviews once a year. We do ours every quarter. We're not waiting for that quarter to go over your performance on these checklists. You're immediately getting that feedback as soon as the observation session has been complete, right? And there's a dialogue, and then there's an adjustment, and then there's a goal for, okay, the next session, here's what I want to see you do so that we get you from the 80% to the 100% score.
Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. If you're leading an IDD organization and you feel like you're just one resignation away from a full-blown crisis and staffing shortage, then today's episode is definitely for you. My guest is Helena McGuire from Melmark, which is a multi-state provider with a staff of over 1,200. And in this episode, she does not share motivational slogans or some catchy new thing that you could try. Actually, what she shares is far more uncomfortable and far more effective. You see, from Melmark's research and experience, they've discovered that turnover is not random and is not inevitable. Instead, one of the biggest keys for solving turnover issues rests on the shoulders of frontline supervisors. Our conversation goes in depth around that and all the different things that Melmark does to make sure that they're not just trained for compliance, but that they're effective in managing people. I can't wait to share it with you. And if you find yourself, while you're listening to this conversation, thinking things like, we need systems like this, but I don't even know where to start. Well, great news. I'm going to be doing a live virtual session in partnership with the University of Minnesota's Direct Support Workforce Solutions. I'll share all the details at the end, and we would love to make sure that you have every resource you need to be successful with your supervisors and with retention in general. Now, without further ado, enjoy today's conversation. We'll do introductions in just a moment, but actually, I want to throw you in the deep end if that's okay. Let's just suppose for a moment that you walked through some kind of portal and you suddenly find yourself the CEO and IDD provider with a few hundred staff, and they're dealing with kind of typical stuff, 50% turnover, 20% vacancy rate. Supervisors and managers, they're struggling to deal with all the employee drama. Just keeping shifts covered is a struggle. And let's say the board is like, hey, you got to pull this together fast. You've got 100 days to show them that you're turning things around or else your job's on the line. What are the first couple of moves that you would make to turn things around?
Sure, let's start there. Unfortunately, that's probably one of the most real scenarios in the, world of human service organizations, sadly. But, I do think about that. We do spend a lot of time talking with all size providers about what sort of struggles they are faced with. I have, thought about this for many years, especially while we built Melmark. I think there's a couple of things. You have those first 100 days. Your first important move is you got to get out there and be visible. We need to, also encourage the staff that are there that things will turn around. So there's got to be some sort of morale booster, some few wins right up front. And I think really at the end, where's that assessment around the deep systemic fixes? So we have to start assessing what's working, what's not working. So most of the time I say your first, like, out of the gate move, stabilize the workforce you do have, like stop the bleedings and really start listening to them, ask questions, observe them in their environment, talk to all of your stakeholders, your staff, those that you serve, their parents, guardians, board members, as well as then, the regulators, our licensors who are invested in the compliance side of organizations. And so we've got to get out there and, save staffing. We should be tightening up operations and compliance, absolutely. And then I think really last of all, where's our leadership capacity? So we have a lot of middle managers, frontline supervisors. Where are they at? And what kind of supports do they need? So 100 days isn't a lot of time, but at least it starts. You start that deep dive into, those kind of essential areas.
Yeah, and let me just ask you one follow up on that too. Then we'll get to your actual introduction, which, and that is, do you find that there are kind of some predictable spots that when you say like you say stop the bleeding, are there some predictable, almost like low hanging fruit or quick fixes? I mean, I know we all know it's going to be relevant, like it's going to depend on the agency that's involved. But are there some that you see as trends of like, man, this is a really common spot where there's bleeding that and that can hit what some of the most common fixes are?
Yeah, I think one of the things we realize is when we actually talk with staff about why they stay, they start to tell you information, and it is certainly about the individuals they're serving and the care they're providing. They're very invested in that mission, but it might also be that they're working particularly in a setting where there is high reinforcement. There's gratitude for the work they're doing, so they're feeling some source of reinforcement. And yet, in other settings, maybe because the leadership style is different, it's not consistent, they're not receiving that level of reinforcement. There's also most of the time, we talk to staff about schedules, the work schedules, the predictability of it, the consistency of it. And so are there ways to impact that, which it impacts staff members right away when you start giving them schedules that feel manageable, you know? So I do think we have seen some trends when we've consulted with other organizations that are very meaningful and can be done. I'm not saying overnight, but really in a short amount of weeks once we get that information from staff.
Hmm. Okay, no, that's insightful. Um, well, why don't you tell us who you are? Introduce yourself, what your actual role is there at Melmark, and maybe just briefly kind of explain the size and the scope of Melmark's programs.
Sure. So, as you know, I'm Helena McGuire. I am the executive vice president and chief clinical officer at Melmark. And for those of you who don't know, Melmark is a multi-state nonprofit human service organization, and we provide evidence-based educational, residential, therapeutic programs for children and adults. All of which have a range of diagnoses from autism spectrum disorders, intellectual disabilities, brain injuries, and then really other developmental disabilities. We also do provide in some of our location early intervention services as well as center-based ABA and home-based ABA services in some of our locations. And then another small side service that we do is consultation to local public schools to help them build ABA infrastructure and supports in schools so that potentially kids with specialized needs could remain in public school. Our current size across the three different states, we serve roughly about 600 individuals across the three different states. Um, uh, and I'm going to extract from that kind of our home-based services because that's kind of a moving target. And we have over 1,200 staff across the three different locations.
All right, and you guys have been building, I believe it's called in the Envision Smart model. You guys are model builders there. I know that about you. Um, can you take us back? What problem were you, or you plural, trying to solve when you first began systematizing training, supervision, professional development, and kind of what has become, maybe you started with that and maybe not, but what has become the Envision Smart model?
Yeah. When we first started shaping what is eventually now what we're calling the Envision Smart model or the Melmark model, what we were really trying to do is solve that persistent systems problem that most or human service organizations have, right? And some of those problems include inconsistent quality supervision and training programs, right? It's either non-existent or it's the bare minimum, but there's no real development process. We're also trying to think about how do we help um, organizations, including ourselves at different times, with reducing turnover, right? High turnover in human service organizations just it can decimate the service delivery, right? Um, we also wanted to try to address the problem around, there's compliance. Certain organizations might be good on the compliance side, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's the competence side. So there's a gap, right? And building that competency and filling that gap was one of our thought process in envisioning this model of services for human service organization. The other part that we were considering is in a lot of our consultation work and our own work, within building Melmark, there's sometimes a misalignment between departments within an organization. So for example, you might have a human resources department who might also be responsible for delivering the required training for staff. However, they're not necessarily behavior analysts who understand instruction, the behavior skills training model, and how to really deem competency in staff, right? And so there's different training styles and training knowledge if it comes out of your HR department versus your clinical department, and sometimes the two didn't talk. Or so you have an operations department, a facilities department that's responsible to ensure the upkeep, and that adds to the quality of life for the individuals that you serve in a variety of settings. And maybe it would take days or weeks before they either were notified or felt that it was urgent, maybe to fix things that are broken and vital in the home, right? So it was a thought process behind everybody has to be committed to a vision, which is a model of how services would be integrated to result in quality outcomes for those that we serve, right? And so the concept behind the model, and now really the execution of that model, is that we've created a unified evidence-based system that really ensures every employee, and not just including your frontline direct support staff, but every employee in any department within that organization that's vital for services to actually be delivered, all the way to your most senior leader, that they're supported, that they're trained, that they're supervised in a consistent, measurable, yet values-driven way, right? We're all committed to the same. We all understand we only exist because we have these individuals to serve, right? And so what does that mean? And so that's really been kind of the development of our model, where we deliberately integrate a very structured onboarding, competency-based training, and that's, again, to everybody. They all go through that regardless of function. It also integrates into all job functions modeling, and it really in that moment feedback around how folks are performing, both in structured and non-structured settings, as well as accountability and creating professional development pathways. So people on day one who join us understand that there's a future here, and I could go
Mm.
A, B, or C pathway. So it was really about building a culture of, clinical and operational excellence, and not just another training program.
Yeah, I want to lean in on something you just said. I was in a conversation earlier today, in fact, about this. There's such a it seems to be such chronic issues around developing people and developing leaders. And when you talk about having something that's evidence based, that's applying to kind of every person within the organization, I kind of almost just like feel this. I feel like I can hear the response that's rising up of like, yeah, but how's that not just what we're already trying to do anyway? So what can we get into maybe just a little bit into the weeds on what does that actually look like, so that you can make sure that, you know, this person who maybe just got promoted into their role actually carries on that same level of expertise, or that they're really getting developed. Like, what does that actually look like or feel like on a day-to-day basis?
And we start with one basic assumption. Everybody needs that continued training in their leadership or supervisory roles, however we want to address that. And it is that fundamental understanding that we start with. I might promote you today, and you're probably really good at your current job. But stepping into a leadership and a supervisory role, you really have to have the same commitment to developing your staff and implementing very supportive modeling and feedback around the aspects of the job that they're expected to do, while simultaneously you're receiving that same level of modeling and feedback to execute your duties until you have really achieved that mastery criteria we're looking for. And then we kind of move you into more maintenance checks, you know? And so I'll just use a frontline supervisor, a program manager in one of our residential homes, previously a direct support professional, promoted today to the program management position. They have a pretty structured uh, train on the job training program where their supervisor carves out a variety of different topics and skills related to those topics that they will watch their supervisor do on site with their direct support staff and then flip the script. That new supervisor will essentially implement the same supervision technique or tactic and be observed and provide feedback on that. So we're still using the same model independent of what line staff member you are.
Okay, so then tell me if this would apply to this. If I suppose I'm that DSP that just got promoted and I'm the frontline supervisor now, and I've got someone that's consistently showing up late. They're still showing up. They're maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes late. So they're not on the verge of getting fired or anything like that. It's not even corrective action plan. This is just sort of I need to have a hard conversation. Is that the kind of thing that my boss is going to try to help model or show me the first go round? And
That's right.
okay. And then the next go round, which hopefully isn't with the same employee, but very well might be, are they going to be there in the room when I have that conversation? I mean, are those the kinds of skills you're talking about?
Exactly. It could be, and that's, I will tell you one thing. Attendance for us is a big deal. And a big deal in the sense that we use that as an exact example of we don't expect people to be late. And if you are, it's because there's these extenuating circumstances, but those are rare, right? So in our onboarding orientation program, we actually that's a skill right out of the gate. Anybody who's joining us, we drill that down. So now you're on site and you're either the DSP, but you're now the supervisor of that DSP who's experiencing timeliness issues. That's exactly the model we would use if that is your first time as a supervisor addressing timeliness. Your supervisor would be modeling that skill for you, and then the next time around you might be the person intervening, but your supervisor's observing you. And at any point in time that it needs to be interrupted because it's not going well, the supervisor's supervisor would model that as well.
So, first of all, I really like what you're saying. Like, I really believe in this, and I mean, I kind of preach this if that's the right word for it. But I want to push back a little bit still because that sounds really time intensive. So, how on earth do you guys find the time organizationally? Like, I can always think of like, oh yeah, there's that one person that's like really great with people. They just sort of that they just they just do that. But how do you guys find time to do that? How do you build that in?
And that is part of us really dedicating with our resources. What are those number of positions that we need in order to make sure we have either sophisticated trainers or ample supervisory lines that can provide that support? So it is a choice on organizations how you build your lines of leadership.
Sure.
I usually try to take people way back because people challenge me all the time on that. Even our own like supervisors who are trainers challenge us all the time, and I usually try to uh, calm them down and say it's an investment of time. We all agree, but you're either committing the time now and ensuring that we have successful supervisors, or you'll commit time later when we lose the DSP or the supervisor. And we have this revolving door, right? And so, what we're asking and training and supporting supervisors of supervisors to do is to really build our supervisory line so they're so strong and so confident and feel really good about their skill set that they stay for a long time, right? And it reduces that time burden where retention is the key variable here. How long are we keeping our supervisors? And in turn, how happy are the staff that they're supervising, right? We need to do those checks as well. Um, so you're right. Time is I hear about time all the time.
Yeah,
I
of
don't have a
course you do.
solution for people other than to say, think about, do you want to spend time in corrective action? Do you want to spend time filling holes because we have vacancies, or fulfilling that supervisor's job because they leave because they're dissatisfied? So it's a choice.
Yeah, no, that gosh, that makes a lot of sense from where I'm coming from. There's that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think I'm hearing that in what you're saying. And really, I can think about conversations I've had with frontline supervisors or managers, different people where they don't necessarily feel like they have some of those kinds of skills down pat. They're in the role and they're trying, but and I will say it seems as though it does take not having that developed ends up costing a lot of time on an ongoing basis and a lot of stress. That is something I've seen many times over, is that they lose staff and their experience of being a supervisor, I've seen that love-hate relationship develops. They love the staff, they love the role that they're in, and yet they hate it because they feel in over their heads.
That's right. That's right. And we need to support that. Nobody should feel that they're, swimming upstream and not getting there in a sufficient amount of time or in a way that, feels good. These are conversations that we have to be having preemptively with supervisors and at every level, that these are our core values too. I don't just train new hires coming in the door so that they are competent direct support staff. I have to train our supervisors because the two are aligned. You can't have a direct support staff that continues to thrive in the environment that they have to perform the services if they don't have a supervisor who can support their performance. And supporting performance should 80% of the time be the reinforcement side of it, receiving plenty of reinforcement for the work and the outcomes of that work. But also supporting our staff is sometimes giving them the feedback they need to continue to improve or readjust some of their performance because it's not working so well, you know? And that might be timeless. And in other cases in our settings, it's dress code. We have a dress code and there's an expectation. So it's a wide range of skills. And that's all even before we've gotten to client care.
Right. No, this is just like basic managing of staff and yeah, no, absolutely. You haven't even got to any of the clinical stuff or the right support or care of clients or whatever. Yeah. So this a lot of this I think comes out of the organizational behavior management, the OBM literature, which is not necessarily, it's sort of, in my mind, it's sort of the best kept secret, not purposefully a secret. Because I I have a behavioral background. Most of the people I'm talking with, interacting with, that is not their background. So the initials OBM means nothing to them. But if you don't mind, in everyday language, could you kind of explain? You don't have to explain all of OBM, but kind of this intersection of Melmark's model. I hear it because I know what OBM is, but help maybe just give a brief, what is OBM? So if someone wants to dive deeper in this, of course, we're going to, at the end here, give them links to Melmark and all that kind of stuff. But even this is like zooming backwards. What's the foundation for this? And how can they start to get these ideas or learn more about that with OBM?
So right. OBM, I know it's always sounds so technical and jargony, but really at the end of the day, OBM is really what supports people in their environment to thrive because there's well-built systems that allow them to have very clear, consistent expectations, and outcomes. And that's universally part of what we have been engineering for all of our years at Melmark is an integrated system of care. So whether it's from day one or it's, day 1,000 of your employment there, you have very clear, consistent systems that you work within that allow you to actually thrive and see the outcomes that we produce from whether it's progress on children IEPs or adult ISP plans. So sharing that process with staff from day one, helping them understand that you don't kind of make it up as you go. There's this very clear, written detail that's modeled for you. There's a system of care,
Hmm.
essentially.
You mean
That's an
apply? You mean
important.
applied to the staff as well,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
just a system of care to individuals being served. Okay, go ahead.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, and I think that's the important part, that staff know that there's a system for just about any question you ask me. So I want to go back to school. Do we have a system that helps support me to do that, right? Or I just want to advance my skill set and maybe someday be a supervisor. What's my pathway for that? um, all the way down to, it could be I need a schedule change because my life has changed. What's the system that allows me to do that, right? So I think OBM in our world, as I talk about it here, is really how we've created different systems and pathways for staff to really be able to excel and advance their skill set, but also continue to come to work and be very motivated by the actual work that they're doing every day.
Do you measure things that the average agency doesn't measure when it comes to staff? I mean, there's every agency is going to have their there's going to be some fiscal, payroll data related to staffing. There's going to be HR data related to staffing. But do you guys measure things that are different than the norm that gets at some of this?
Right. So the skills we expect of our staff, we pretty much have a measurement tool for the very structured observations we do every day. And I'll go back to timeliness to work and the dress code. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
There's actually structured checklists that we'll complete on you on a weekly basis that allows us to rate, you know, how you're performing in that area, right?
Like
So,
we're talking an actual checklist, like a sheet of
uh-huh.
paper or on a computer screen, but an actual checklist. And your supervisors must be filling these out all the time then? I mean, on a very regular
Yep,
basis?
they have I'm not going to say a quota or criteria, but they are given general guidelines that we do expect them to rate staff across a couple of sessions a week, and then really at the end of the month, what that or how each staff member performed in a range of different skills that we are targeting, right? So, and it will range from those, what I call basic professional responsibility skills, getting to work but it had also increased to actual observation sessions around implementation of behavior support plans and how somebody, set up an instructional session or implemented a behavior intervention plan for with all components intact. So there's different measurement, there's different skills that we're measuring that at the end of that person's appraisal period will be reflected in a performance review. Um, but more importantly than that, we're not waiting for this performance review. Some agencies might only do performance reviews once a year. We do ours every quarter. We're not waiting for that quarter to go over your performance on these checklists. You're immediately getting that feedback as soon as the observation session has been complete, right? And there's a dialogue, and then there's an adjustment, and then there's a goal for, okay, the next session, here's what I want to see you do so that we get you from the 80% to the 100% score, right?
So it's fast, frequent feedback.
Yes. Yeah. And the most important part, and sometimes our supervisors struggle with actually getting that feedback across, right? Which means they might be making a judgment. Well, you scored 80% on your, behavior skills observation. You're doing great. What we're trying to do is make sure supervisors are analyzing that maybe the last week's check on that same skill set, the same two areas that we maybe missed last time, we're still missing this time. We might want to pull that out, right? We might want to remediate that because one of them might have been taking data, and data is an essential component of determining client progress, right? So sometimes we then have to work with our supervisors to really analyze what's that performance feedback telling you, and do we need to remediate even some of those areas that we might have trivialized to the employee as like, you're doing great, you got 80%, right? So it's not just we did the checklist and we're done, but is actually informing and changing performance in the area for our staff members that they might have repeat errors in.
This is a metaphor just kind of keeps popping in my mind as I'm hearing you describe this. I feel like at a lot of places, and it's not that not trying to be intentionally neglectful of this, but it's sort of like the little league team where you or at whatever level of baseball, but you go up, you play a lot of games, you're up to the plate, you're swinging, and your performance feedback is basically did the ball move or not. And but what I'm hearing that you guys are having is you're having batting practice with a batting coach that's actually giving pointers and saying, "Listen, you got to, I'm okay. I'm not a baseball player, but so I don't know all the ins and outs. You got to change where your elbow's positioned, or you got to drop your shoulder, lift your shoulder. Or you've got to like swing your hip at different. They're getting in between the game's all everyone's in the game. So I mean, because we're working with individuals, that doesn't go away. But that you guys have kind of carved out through these checklists and actually using them powerfully, not just having them, but using them powerfully. That you've almost kind of created this like everyone's got their own batting coach. And so I would imagine people start hitting the ball a lot better.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think I said this earlier, people do better when there's a system that actually helps them do better, right? And that system is people. I mean, it's not a automated machine who gets out there and videotapes them and, gives them feedback through a machine. It's people. It's real people who have to be in that environment and interacting with staff and observing and modeling and giving feedback. And I do think there are organizations that might struggle with putting those very skilled supervisors, mentors, trainers, coaches, however we want to label them, in those direct environments during the key hours, right? Key hours that you have your staff and your clients there. I think there's a lot of organizations that struggle with that because in a residential environment, what are those hours? It's your evenings and your weekends. And how many, BCBAs or how many program supervisors want to work those hours, right? And so how do you change that dynamic where it's actually motivating to work those hours because we're generating these great outcomes? So we are compelled to engineer these systems to support our staff members because that's our future too. A lot of these staff members we're training today, and what some people might say is, maybe granular skills, right? Are what we consider the future of Melmark. These are the folks we need to develop pathways for, retain, and really advance so that they're moving into leadership roles as other folks might retire or, it's just a consideration around what's that legacy you're building for that organization so it doesn't fall apart.
Wow, what a conversation. And that's only part one. The next part comes out next week. I always try to leave you with one action move. And today's is this: stop evaluating your supervisors and start auditing your supervision system. Here's how I would play that out. If you were to pick one common supervisory task, this could be conversations around attendance or reinforcing good performance or redirecting behaviors that don't line up with best practices. And then you can ask three questions when it comes to that. Is this skill being modeled for our frontline supervisors? Is it being practiced? And is feedback being given in real time? I mean, feedback to the supervisors. And if the answer is no, then it's probably not really just a supervisor problem, it's a gap in the system. So take some time if you want, and you can look at addressing it in that way. Now, in part two of the conversation, Helena breaks down the onboarding and training system that makes all of this sustainable at Melmark, including how they maintain an 11%, you heard me right, 11% turnover rate, which is just absolutely remarkable in this field. And also, I told you this at the beginning, but if you want help applying these ideas in your own organization, I'm co hosting a free virtual session with the University of Minnesota's Direct Support Workforce Solutions. I could not be more excited about this. And in this, we're going to walk leaders through how to start building people systems without overwhelming your team. You can get all the details and scoop and register for it for free at iddleader.com. It's right at the top of the homepage, so you can't miss it. And listen, I can't wait to get back with you again next week for part 2 of this conversation. In the meantime, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.